staff members, everyone. All right. Seasoned board member, tenured board members, that is better. All right, good morning. We're about to call the meeting of the TRPA Regional Planning Committee to order. The date is Wednesday, December 13th, 2023. It is about 11:21 a.m. First on the agenda is a roll call to determine quorum. Maria.
Ms. Bagwell,
Here.
Ms. Dis,
Here.
Ms. Gustafson,
Here.
Mr. Honigman,
Here.
Ms. Loomer,
Here.
Mr. Settlemyre.
Here.
Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Great, thank you, Maria. All right, now I'll go over the remote and in-person meeting rules for the day. For members of the public who are joining us remotely, to observe the meeting, go to trpa.gov. Under the calendar header, click on Governing Board Hybrid Meeting for December 13th, 2023. There you'll find a link to the public webinar hosted on Zoom. To address committee members directly with your comments, raise your hand in Zoom by clicking the raise hand at the bottom of your screen at the appropriate agenda item. With your hand raised, you will be unmuted by TRPA staff and have 3 minutes to address the committee. If you use the dial-in number to join us by telephone, you can use *9 to raise your hand and be unmuted. For items that are agendized as informational only, we will hear public comment during the general public comment period at the end of the meeting. Comments on items agendized for action or possible action, we will hear public comment before the board takes any action. To remote committee members, if you wish to speak, please raise your hand in Zoom. You will find the hand icon on the bottom of your screen. Remote committee members may not use the chat box to make any comments or to have sidebar conversations. Please, everyone, remember to mute your mic unless speaking to cut down on background noise. Finally, I'd like to ask that all of the remote members turn on their cameras if they're able. Members of the public who have joined us in person, please raise your hand at the appropriate time for public comment. You'll be called up to the front to speak. To ensure that everyone has time to make their desired comments, you can agree with the previous commenter rather than making comments that repeat what others have said. Committee members who are in person, please raise your hand if you wish to comment and speak clearly into the microphone in front of you. If you're viewing the webinar on a personal computer, please ensure that your microphone and speakers are turned off to prevent audio feedback into the room. If committee members need to ask clarifying questions during the presentations, please do so, but we'll save our deliberations until after the presentation is complete. The next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chair, on item 4, there will not be a presentation, but you should take public comment and then postpone any action to the next meeting.
Great, thank you, John. All right, we will deem the agenda approved as posted with those changes. All right, next item is item number 2, approval of the minutes. We have a set of minutes from the November 15th, 2023 meeting on page 15. Do any member of the committee wish to make a change or comment? Anyone online? All right, if not, we do have one. All right.
So is that the floor to me? Okay.
Yep. Sorry.
Okay, I just want to, on the minutes, change the second sentence, called the meeting to order at 12:08 p.m. instead of 8 a.m., please.
And Mayor Bagwell is filling in for Shelley Aldine, and in the tradition of finding typos, she gets the gold star today. So
All right.
well done, Mayor.
Yeah.
She trained
Thank
me
you.
well. Yeah.
Thank you for doing that.
Mhm.
All right. Any other changes? If not, I'll approve a motion, entertain a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
So moved.
Great, thank you. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone object? Nope. All right. Looks like the motion passes. Now we're on to agenda item number 3, election of a vice chair. As a reminder to the public, after committee discussion on this item, you may raise your hand in person to be called on, or in the Zoom webinar to be unmuted by TRPA staff to share your comments. Committee members, any questions, comments, or nominations?
This is Jessica. Just for the record, I'd like to first say I'm sorry that I won't be serving as vice chair anymore. I've enjoyed my time as vice chair. And secondly, to nominate Director Settlemeyer as vice chair of the Regional Planning Committee.
Great, thank you. Any other comments or nominations? All right. Then we'll go to public comment on this item. If any member of the public wishes to address the committee on this agenda item, please raise your hand now, either in person or by clicking on the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom screen, or by dialing *9 on your phone, and you'll be called on and unmuted by a TRPA staff member. Anyone in the room? Does not look like it. Anyone online?
Mr. Chair, there are no hands raised to comment.
Great, then we'll close public comment on this. And any other comments from the committee? Seeing none, I'm ready to entertain a motion on this item to nominate James Settlemeyer, Secretary Settlemeyer, as vice chair of the committee.
Okay, I'll make the motion.
Great. Okay, all right. Sorry, I thought we were gonna. As stated, perfect. All right, sorry, I was waiting for more, and I guess we don't need it. A motion to elect James Settlemeyer to serve as vice chair on the Regional Planning Committee. All right, we have that motion. Any discussion? All right, then we'll go to a roll call vote. Maria?
Ms. Gustafson,
Yes.
Ms. Bagwell,
Yes,
Ms. Dis,
Yes.
Ms. Loomer,
Yes.
Mr. Settlemeyer,
Yes.
Mr. Honigman.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, the motion passes.
Great, thank you. That brings us to agenda item number 4, and this is one that we are changing. Originally, we were going to have a presentation on the Transportation and Sustainable Communities Threshold Standards. We will not be having that presentation, but we understand some people might have come to present public comment on this item, so we don't want to waste your time, so we will take public comment. So I see Ellie already proceeding to the front. So we'll start with you, Ellie. Thanks.
Thank you, Ellie Waller, for the record. I won't go into all the details. I do have a question. All presentations that go to the legislators, do they come before the governing board before they get presented to the legislators? A couple comments where you have the funding tracking worksheet. There's projects there that the local jurisdictions, me as a member of the public, really like the local jurisdictions to have presentations. The SR 28 Spooner Mobility Hub is Douglas County, even though it intersects Washoe County at Highway 28. There is secured funding as stated. The earmarks are here for $4.6 million for that 250 space parking lot and joint invasive species boat check station. So I would be hopeful, as well as TRPA, that the local jurisdictions get presentations from the Tahoe Transportation District. I wish Carl was still here. I've said this before at the Transportation District meetings. And I do appreciate everybody trying to state their names. It is, and watching acronyms, it is appreciative to the public at large. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellie. Anyone else in the room? Okay, we have someone else.
Still on, all right. All right, good morning, Regional Planning Committee Chair, Vice Chair members, as well as TRPA staff and members of the public. My name is Jesse Patterson. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer for the League to Save Lake Tahoe. And today I'm speaking on the VMT threshold item. I do realize the presentation and recommendation portions were pulled last night, but I think a discussion with the public is warranted. This is a good topic to be talking about, but as presented was not necessary to trigger an upcoming safeguard that's in place for the end of this year, as stated in the VMT threshold. So I'm going to give a little context on the VMT threshold, our involvement, and then a little bit of our stance. So the updated VMT threshold was a reduction of VMT per capita from the baseline that was negotiated and explained very well and agreed upon. And while there's many ways to achieve it, implementation of the Regional Transportation Plan or projects within was one of the best ways identified to help us achieve that threshold. But to do that, we need funding, and I think many of you sat through the former committee and realize how complicated that can be. But specifically, we needed ongoing sources of funding, so we could have some assurance or that we would get all the projects necessary to offset that VMT over time. And doing it sort of year to year doesn't give you those assurances, and we may actually be making the situation worse as we on a parallel track work to offset it by implementation. So an environmental safeguard was put into place to be automatically triggered at the end of this year. And that was negotiated in good faith with TRPA and many stakeholders, the League and the California Attorney General in particular. And if we miss that mark on ongoing funding, that would be automatically triggered at the end of this year. And that environmental safeguard was a no net unmitigated VMT for all projects except for affordable housing and single family housing. And it really ensured that we didn't make the issue to continue to get worse with the VMT situation while we looked for the funding to implement essentially the mitigation or solution. We didn't want to get further behind than we already are. And while it was an ambitious goal, it's one that we all agreed was worth working towards and achieving those projects for the environment of Lake Tahoe as well as the communities that we can all agree on. And it was unanimously approved by this board in April of 2021. Since then, a lot has happened. You've heard about the bi-state consultation. That's been an excellent effort, but many stakeholders across local, state, federal sectors have been working together on this. And we really appreciate the attention and hard work of TRPA staff in particular in explaining the complexities of funding for a regional transportation plan, as well as planning, as well as working very hard to secure a significant amount of funding in 2023, which should be applauded. That's excellent progress, and we're very excited about it. Despite that progress and that success in 2023, we have clearly fallen short of the ongoing source of funding, which doesn't get us those assurances that we can implement the plan over time and offset those VMT impacts. So we look forward to continuing our conversations with the TRPA, the staff, the stakeholders, everyone involved moving into 2024, but under the new trigger of no net VMT for all projects except for affordable housing and single family residents. So thank you for your time and attention today. We look forward to talking about it more, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you, Jesse. Anyone else in the room? Seeing none, anyone online?
Mr. Chair, there's one hand raised. Ann Nichols, if you unmute, you can address the committee.
Yeah, Ann Nichols, North Tahoe Preservation Alliance. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. You know, I just have never, hear the 777 plan. The public is unaware of it. You guys are all aware of it, but the public isn't. And we need to, how is the public supposed to pay for this? How is it going to happen? It's going to be every year for 20 years. You know, we need to know. You're like in a bubble about it. So I'm hoping that you're going to have some transparency. You're going to the public for money without, it's really a tax without representation. So thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Anyone else?
Mr. Chair, there are no other hands raised to comment.
All right, then we'll close public comment and go to committee member comments. Does any member of the committee have any comments on this? Cindy.
Sure. Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Cindy Gustafson for the record. I had the pleasure of serving, I think, 5 years on the bi-state consultation, trying to represent North Shore long before I served on this board on transportation issues that I've been working on in various capacities for 3 or 4 decades now. I'm not that old, but somehow they creep up on you, those decades. And I appreciate that we're pulling this off the agenda because we do need more dialogue. What is ongoing and what will count? And then when we look at the efforts we made and the agreements we came up with on the bi-state, I think there's a disagreement on what we agreed to and why. And so I really look forward to those discussions and hearing from people what sustainable or ongoing sources they will support to achieve those goals, because I think that is critical for us to pursue those. We did quite a bit of work and had a consultant come in and look at various sources. So to dust off all that and bring the new board members up to speed, I think is really critical. And then one question for staff. In the breakdown on page 647, we show that the local private share is underfunded. And in fact, I think that we have exceeded that. I can tell you just in Placer County, we're general funding over 6 million a year on our own to many of the free and frequent micro mass transit, many of the items that are in that project list. So I think I just want to make sure that how we count, that I better understand how to count those numbers. So when we do bring it back, let's talk about that. That's why I brought up the 4 million we just approved yesterday for additional micro mass transit and other solutions that are on the list. So let's make sure we get those numbers accurate for the public. And again, for the public, the local private share, every jurisdiction will have a choice as to what to do. Ours are coming out of TOT, transient occupancy tax, and TBID dollars primarily, although there could be some other general fund in planning for some of the larger projects, like the roundabouts, sidewalks, trails, that. So I'll get that breakdown from Placer County for you. But just wanted to make that clear that I think when we look at that dialogue, that's again why I said we've got to look at what all the local jurisdictions have done with incredible contributions in micro mass transit and other solutions that I know we all support and want to see continued. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Cindy. Any other comments from committee members? Anyone online? Oh, Alex.
So clearly still new and catching up to see, I was not here for the negotiations. But I did just want to express concern about being sure that we're upholding the deals that we made. I've spoken to both the league and the AG's office. I think there definitely is a misunderstanding somewhere about when the trigger happens, how it happens. So John, yeah, if you want to elaborate and just reference what you just showed me, I'm still not clear reading that language, what's required of the board. It feels like if there's an automatic trigger because the funding hasn't been met, it just automatically happens. And I would think if we're pushing this to January, it doesn't sound like there's any projects in the queue coming in the next month. If there are, I think it's better to be on the safe side and institute the no net VMT trigger now, just so we're not retroactively going back to people and be like, oh my gosh, we got it wrong. Now we have to redo this work. I'd rather just err on the side of caution. But yeah, John, if you want to speak more to what you think the board needs to be doing in terms of finding in advance of the trigger being pulled, let me, have you do that.
I'm gonna make sure that Dan Segan is not lounging in the back with his feet up, that he comes up and help me walk through this with you, because he's partly responsible. Okay, so the way that we've been talking about a trigger, and it really goes off of a policy and goal that the board adopted as part of the adoption of the new transportation threshold for VMT per capita. And it was based on funding. So if there's a policy that says basically, and unfortunately, I gave Alex my computer. No, I think I can do it. And Dan's here to correct me if I get this wrong. But there is the policy that's articulated, that's set forth in your staff report, that essentially says that we need to have funding by ongoing regional based funding by December 30th, 31st of this year, 2023. Then in a separate policy, there's actually the way that trigger is pulled is if there's a finding that we haven't met that standard, then automatically the standards of significance for reviewing projects becomes more strict for certain classes of projects. Okay, so while the standard is set on that you need to have funding by a particular date, there's nothing in the standard that automatically therefore triggers the reduction in the standard of significance that is the project review function of this. So what happens is you need to have a finding first that the standard has not been met. Then, if there's a positive finding that it has not been met, then the increased standard of significance automatically goes into effect. But that doesn't happen automatically. It happens upon a finding by the governing board that the conditions of that initial standard were not met, i.e. ongoing regional funding by December 31st, 2023. Dan, did I articulate that? Do you want to clarify anything?
And may I, or you?
So let me just
Mhm.
finish up. So therefore, in the interim between now and January 24th, unless the board decides to make a finding on this, an agendized meeting, there is no automatic reduction in the standard of significance. That only happens after that finding has been made. Then that becomes automatic, but first you have to make a finding. And there's no deadline specified in the regional plan in this implementation section for when that finding is supposed to be made. I think there's a certain understanding that if it's related to that December 31st deadline, you know, there's some urgency that it should be made relatively soon thereafter. There is also articulated in that implementation section for this threshold, there's a adaptive management process that there's a committee that meets quarterly. Dan?
No, but their first meeting is scheduled on January 19th of
That
2024.
then reviews information as to whether or not we are in compliance with various transportation requirements. They then issue a report that comes to the governing board, and then I don't know if any of you, where is Shelley when we need her as to the last governing board standing as to who is there. But then there's presented from that adaptive management measures that the board can take to address the question whether or not we're meeting our threshold obligations. Now, let's just contrast that really quickly with the triggers that if we also in this section of our goals and policies, that if we don't meet certain VMT per capita standard milestones that were put in along the way, then automatically there is a response to that, an adaptive management response of increasing fees. And Dan, what was the second part of that?
The second part is a higher standard of significance for projects that are outside town centers.
And there's no, once that, you know, the check is made on what the VMT per capita is, there's no finding in that circumstance that the board needs to make. For some reason, it was just put in for the finding requirement for the reduction in the standard of significance for project review for VMT generation.
Great.
Clear as can be? No.
Yeah.
James, do you have we go over something?
Thank you, John. I appreciate the discussion. The thing that we were talking about on a league call was a discussion of what constitutes ongoing. Since the legislature has the ability at any one time to invalidate previous funding agreements, and as we're seeing a shortfall potential in the state of California, they could be doing just that, or a change of allocation, sorry. That being said,
Budget.
what does the term ongoing, what's the definition of that? Does it need to be a dedicated tax stream? Do projects, you know, count towards that? And I think that's part of the reason of the delay of this discussion. I appreciate your explanation, and my confusion isn't about your explanation. It's just the definitions that go into it. So I appreciate the comments.
And remember that makes up your finding. So the board has discretion to figure out how to apply that language to the various sort of, you know, appropriations, sources of funding that are being put forward currently. So there's T-bids, there's, there's legislative appropriations, there's different kinds of funding mechanisms that get us to the 777 or funding of the constrained model for the RTP.
And if I could just add, this is Cindy Gustafson for the record. And again, speaking as a local representative, we took this to heart. And you can go back and see me testify before my Board of Supervisors, before the TTD board and many others, saying the locals need to come up with our share and we need to do it in order to avoid this situation. And, many of us were in support of a basin entry fee as probably the only thing that would meet that kind of ongoing and not be at discretion of project approvals. So I think there's a lot of discussion of what do the two states want to do? Because that's where this is really coming down to. If we can't, we as locals can't do a basin entry fee. We can't trigger, and even our T-bids in California have to be renewed at certain points. So what is going to count? And I think our approach here at this board is to really hear each other out and try to understand how we can move forward cooperatively and meet that. And that would just be, let's celebrate huge success in transportation, number one, because I think we are closer in alignment to everybody's interests and performance than we've ever been in my many decades now of working on the issue and really moving projects forward with a lot of partnership and agreement. But if the two states are going to tell us that they want to implement this, or have another solution for what would be ongoing, I am all ears and we will do more. And I think we're already exceeding the local agreements. So I want to make sure we get that brought forward and honor that, because I think a lot of folks have worked really hard to get there as best we could under our control.
Great. Thank you, Cindy. Julie?
Yeah, and Mr. Chair, I think this discussion just illustrates the complexity that's involved in this and why we're moving that into next month. But a couple things to note. Number one, Member Gustafson, we will go back and make sure all those local sources are correct. Some of it has to do with reporting of the annual fiscal year. This is a federal fiscal year of 23. Monies move between years. So we'll go back and recalibrate all of that for next month. And then certainly happy to continue, discussions offline. But look forward to a really big discussion. Number one, education, getting everybody on the same playing field. So many members of the board, of staff have changed in the last couple of years. It's really imperative that we all just get on the same page. And that's going to take some time. And speaking of time, we have a big agenda in the afternoon. So I think it's really a great idea that we can move this into next month.
Okay, great. Without any necessary comments, I guess we're trying to wrap up. Anyone online? Don't see anyone. All right, so let's move on from that. And that brings us to agenda item number 5, upcoming topics. As a reminder to the public, since this item is informational only, members of the public are welcome to comment at the final public comment item. So John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. John Hester for the record. We have the Tahoe Basin Area Plan amendments from Placer County. We have this item that you were just discussing. For LA, it's TSC1 and RPG and PDS. I think you know what I'm saying, just seriously. We are unscheduled in terms of what date they'll be here, but topics we are working to bring you are the mixed use and inclusionary zoning amendments, area plan amendments from the city of South Lake Tahoe and Douglas County. There may be other items that come up, but those are the ones I know of as of right now.
Great, thank you, John. All right, any comments from committee members? Anyone online? Seeing none, all right, then we'll move on since this is information only. We're on agenda item number 6, committee member comments. Anyone have any comments? See heads shaking no, no one online. All right, then we will move on from that to our final matter of business, which is our general public comment, public interest comment period. Any member of the public wishing to address the Regional Planning Committee on any item listed or not listed on the agenda may do so at this time. Individuals or groups who have already commented on items listed on the agenda are not permitted to comment on the same topic. The Regional Planning Committee is prohibited by law from taking immediate action on or discussing issues raised by the public during this public comment period. All right, so if anyone, member of the public wishes to speak at this time, please raise your hand now in person or by clicking the raise hand at the bottom of your Zoom screen or by dialing *9 on your phone, and you'll be called on and unmuted by a TRPA staff member. All right, so we have Ellie here in person. Ellie?
Ellie Waller, for the record, Douglas County resident. I sat through lots of meetings. I sincerely hope we do not have a repeat of the 1,300 VMT count, which seemed by perception a problem at Bill Yates' last meeting here. And I want to thank anybody that is participating in all of this VMT and how we better understand it. I'm sure you've heard in the past from the public. We're anxious to have TRPA weigh in on short-term rentals, vacation home rentals, whatever you want to call it. There are impacts there that have not been analyzed at any level, at the jurisdiction level or at the TRPA level. There are more cars. There are more people, and that needs to also come forward with your planning of how VMT is counted. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellie. Anyone else in person? All right, let's go to online comment. Anyone with hands raised?
Mr. Chair, there's one hand raised online, and Nichols, if you unmute, you can address the committee.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, we
hi.
can.
Yeah, Ann Nichols, North Tahoe Preservation Alliance. When you're talking about your forthcoming topics, this is piecemeal planning. It's just like you rolled out phase 2 of the housing. Now you're going to do phase 3. You're not going to do an environmental on anything until you get to phase 3. It's piecemealing. It's, I like to say, death by 1,000 cuts. It's just the wrong way it's the short circuit, wrong way to do planning. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Anyone else?
Mr. Chair, there are no other hands raised to comment.
All right, then we'll close public comment. And any other comments from committee members? Nope. All right, then we can move on with this, and we are on. Oh, we just did that. All right. So now I just need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, the meeting is adjourned.